Imagine this. FDA has 50% of its budget from vaccine companies, from the industry. 50%. The CDC has an $11.5 billion budget, and $4.9 billion of that is buying and selling and distributing vaccines. CDC is a vaccine company. It owns 57 vaccine patents, so it can make money on every sale of a vaccine. NIH owns hundreds of vaccine patents. NIH owns half the patent for the Moderna vaccine. There's 5 individuals at NIH, and the rules at NIH, if you're a scientist or an official who worked on a vaccine, you're allowed to collect $150,000 a year in royalties on sales that that vaccine makes. These regulatory agencies are actually vaccine companies. They are not doing their job as regulators. The senior scientist at CDC today, the senior vaccine safety scientist, who's been, in fact, he's still in fact at CDC, he was the senior scientist there for 18 years. He is the author or co-author on all of the major studies that CDC has produced on vaccine safety, and particularly the studies that show the vaccine does not cause autism. His name is Dr. William Thompson. 3 years ago, he came forward and he said, we have been ordered to fake all the science of the last decade on autism. And he said, in fact, we were in the major study, which is called DiStefano 2004. It's the most cited study on this subject, and on PubMed. And he said in that study, we found out that Black boys who get the MMR vaccine had a 363% greater risk of getting an autism diagnosis than Black boys who waited. He said he was ordered to come into a conference room with all that data, with his 4 other co-authors by their CDC boss, who then ordered them to destroy that data in front of them in CDC headquarters, and then published that study saying there is no effect. So you have an agency that is really just an arm of industry, and the people who are in my community who are being derided and vilified, these mothers who have vaccine-injured children, are being vilified in the press, who are saying, wait a minute, we have read the scientific studies. We have read about the industry corruption. We need to talk about this. They're being silenced by the press. They're not allowed to tell their stories, and nobody is talking. Not a single member of Anderson Cooper's staff or Sanjay Gupta has made any effort to talk to Bill Thompson, and he has been begging to be subpoenaed, and he's still at CDC. I'm not anti-vaccine. People call me anti-vaccine because of the way of marginalizing me and silencing me. I've been trying to get mercury out of fish for 37 years. Nobody calls me anti-fish. If they come out with the vaccine, it does what Bill Gates says it's going to do, which is you give one shot, you get lifetime immunity, and there are vanishingly rare serious injuries. And it works. And I'd say, I tell people, yeah, I'm going to get it. Let's go ahead and get it. I agree with you. There was tremendous faith in vaccination during that period. But when you grew up and I grew up, we had 3 vaccines, and all of them were deemed as necessary. They were feared diseases. Today's kids have to take 72 vaccines, 72 doses of 16 vaccines in order to stay in school. Vaccines have another exemption that most people don't know about. They are the only medical product that does not have to be safety tested against a placebo. The vaccine program was conceived as a national security defense against biological attacks on our country, and they wanted to make sure that if the Russians attacked us with a biological agent, anthrax or something like that, we could quickly formulate a vaccine and deploy it to 200 million American civilians without regulatory impediments. They said, if we call it a medicine, we're going to have to test it, and that takes 5 years to do double-blind placebo testing. So let's call it something else. we'll call it a biologic, and we'll exempt biologics from safety testing. So not a single one of the vaccines, the 72 vaccines now administered to our children, have ever been tested against a placebo. And I, in fact, sued HHS in 2016 and said, show me any placebo studies that you have for any vaccines, and they were unable to do so. None of them have been tested, and you don't have to sue them like I did. Anybody can go on their cell phone and look up manufacturer's insert, hepatitis B vaccine, Gardasil vaccine, polio vaccine. You know how many days the current polio vaccine, you know how many days it was safety tested for? 48 hours. The hepatitis B vaccine, the Glaxo version, was 4 days. The Merck version, 5 days. That means that if the baby they gave that to had a seizure on day 6, it never happened. If the baby died on day 6, it never happened. If the baby got food allergies that were diagnosed 2 years later, it never happened. If the baby got autism, which is not diagnosed till 4 years of age, 4.2 years of age, it never happened. Autoimmune diseases, you cannot see those if you have these short-term studies, and you can't see any risk if you don't test against a placebo. Because of that, nobody knows the risk profile for any vaccine that is currently on the schedule. And that means nobody can say with any scientific certainty that that vaccine is averting more injuries and deaths than it's causing. And my question is, how in the heck can we be mandated to children that they take a medical product for which we do not know the risks? And to me, that is criminal. They're skipping key parts of the test. A Moderna vaccine, which is the lead candidate, skipped the animal testing altogether. When they came to human testing, they tested it on 45 people. They had a high dose group of 15 people, a medium dose group of 15 people, and a low dose group of 15 people. In the low dose group, one of the people got so sick from the vaccine they had to be hospitalized. That's 6%. In the high dose group, 3 people got so sick they had to be hospitalized. That's 20%. They're going ahead and making 2 billion doses of that vaccine. And by the way, they are only giving these vaccines in these tests that they're doing to the healthiest people. If you look at their exclusionary criteria, you cannot be pregnant, you cannot be overweight, you must have never smoked a cigarette, you must have never vaped, you must have no respiratory problems in your family, you can't suffer asthma, you can't have diabetes, you can't have rheumatoid arthritis. These are the people they're testing the vaccine on. But that's not who they're going to give them to. These people are like the Avengers. They're like Superman. You can shoot them with a bullet and they won't go down. But what happens when they give them to the typical American, Sally Six-Pack and Joe Bag of Donuts, who's 50 pounds overweight and has diabetes? It's 54% of Americans now has diabetes, overweight. 54% of us has chronic disease. They're testing it on one group, and they're going to give it to another. And we need to know what the risk factor is in the people that they give it to.